Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. Dragon's Dogma 2 is finally upon us, and I am really excited to dive into the game. We've already done a live stream of the character creation system, and we'll probably run that back one more time to make sure everything is just right. With that in mind, I think it's a good time to look at the different vocations or classes available in the game and give you my thoughts on each one. Let me know down in the comments which vocation excites you the most. My community is very excited about this game, so if you want to get plugged in, there's a link in the description to join our Discord, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more content. When creating a new character, you can choose from a list of 4 classes: Fighter, Mage, Thief, and Archer. Later in the game, your options expand to include Mystic Spearhand, Magick Archer, Sorcerer, Trickster, Warrior, and Wayfarer. For those of you who played Dragon's Dogma 1, Strider, Assassin, and Mystic Knight have been taken out of the sequel. The Arisen, which is your main character, will be able to choose from all of these classes. You'll also get a main party member referred to as a pawn, and they will only be able to use 6 of the classes, but they do get specializations to provide more interesting mechanics. All classes receive core skills, weapon skills, and augments. Some of them are automatically learned, while others require you to reach a certain rank and spend discipline points in order to gain them. Core skills are tied to a specific weapon, but you do not manually enable these skills. Instead, they are always available. In some cases, it's helpful to read the description so you can clearly understand how to trigger a core skill's effect. Weapon skills are also tied to a specific weapon, but you must manually enable them, and you can only use 4 in Dragon's Dogma 2. These skills allow you to do a variety of different attacks or spells with your vocation weapon. For the most part, weapon and core skills are not transferable between vocations because they all use different weapons. For example, a Magick Archer uses a special magic bow, so you cannot use archer skills to further enhance its abilities. Augments are passive, and you can enable a limited amount of them. You are also free to mix augments from different vocations, so it can be useful to gain levels in different options to get the best mix. Each vocation's augments will focus on their role, so fighters can get more health, archers can get more range damage, etc., etc. In the first Dragon's Dogma, there were 63 potential augments, and you only had 6 slots to work with, so there was a ton of build variety, and I am sure it will be the same way in this game. The first class we'll review is Fighter, and it serves as a more tank-focused option. That might cause some of you to immediately check out, because oftentimes tanking is boring in video games, but that's definitely not the case in Dragon's Dogma. Fighters are not able to dodge or sidestep attacks, so blocking them with your shield is the only viable option. Blocking has to be done manually, and it takes real skill to do it properly. You must be pointed at the correct angle from the attack, and there's a parry system that rewards you for deflecting blows perfectly. Oftentimes the party will be swarmed, and attacks will come from a myriad of directions, so learning how to do this well will take time, and it was very satisfying in the original game to repeatedly perfectly time blocks against powerful monster attacks. Pawns automatically block perfectly, so this vocation provides a fantastic way to give your companion more survivability. Part of the reason tanking is boring in other games is that your abilities are dedicated to defense, and you can only use regular attacks for offense, which can feel very uninspired. This is not the case in Dragon's Dogma because each of your attacks have a ton of impact, and they can hit multiple enemies with each swing, even though you are using a one-handed weapon. Regular attacks with a fighter are actually a ton of fun to use, especially when you are climbing up monsters and hammering away at their soft spots. Obviously, you cannot blow enemies up the way other classes can, but fighter is not offensively boring at all. Some of the best damage dealing vocations in Dragon's Dogma also have lower health pools and are vulnerable to melee attacks. Their most powerful abilities have long cast times, where the character is completely vulnerable to being interrupted or flat out killed by charging foes. Having a fighter who rushes out to the front line and draws heat is a fantastic way to support a team mainly focused on offense. Of course, there are other vocations that can fight on the front line, but the enemy AI will oftentimes ignore them to focus on targets it knows can be quickly eliminated. Fighter is one of only 2 vocations who can taunt enemies to ensure the threat isn't ignored and provide your backline with relief. Fighter is also the only class that's able to use swords, maces, and sickles. Since assassins have been removed from the game, fighters are probably also the only vocation who can use shields. That's 3 different weapons you'll only be able to utilize if using a fighter, while most other vocations only have 1 unique weapon. Some of the fighter's weapon skills specifically revolve around targeting airborne enemies, so even though it's preferable to have a ranged character to deal with flying foes, your character won't be useless in these encounters. Fighter augments revolve around increasing your physical defense, your speed when carrying or lifting objects, and how much heat you draw from enemies. These options could obviously be very useful for giving a squishy backline more survivability or making a different frontline vocation more tanky. The next vocation is Mage, and while it does come with offensive options, the real claim to fame here is providing buffs and healing. Most of the other vocations are completely self-absorbed, so if a party member is in trouble, there's only so much you can do. Mages have a wealth of options to support the team, starting with their role as a healer. You do not automatically heal during or after fights, so you must take a potion, rest, or use a spell in order to patch up wounds. Resting can only be done in a few areas on the map, and potions cost money, so the best option is letting a mage handle this task for you. Combat encounters are very difficult, even on low levels, so having a healer constantly on hand is invaluable. As you progress through the game, your mage will get more powerful spells that have longer incantation times, reinforcing the need to have someone on the front line drawing heat. Mage is also fantastic for removing debilitating statuses, such as sleep using holy magic. They can lay down fields of holy or darkness elements to assist allies while damaging enemies. You'll also get a variety of elemental buffs, which can be used to give party members more damage. This is invaluable because many enemies are vulnerable to specific types of damage, and having a mage will let you switch things up on the fly. This will also make vocations like Fighter much more offensively viable. On top of all this, mages do come with offensive spells that can be cast with your staff, and again, they have elemental properties. You'll be able to shower the battlefield with ice, fire, and lightning effects depending on what the situation calls for. It's not going to be as devastating as what the Sorcerer can do, but it's definitely another feather in your cap. Mage augments allow you to heal more damage, increase your magic defense, and reduce the duration of debilitations. Next up on the list is Thief, and this vocation focuses on using dual daggers to slice through enemies while dancing across the battlefield. If mobility is what you value most in gameplay, then this is definitely the vocation for you. Thieves are able to dodge and sidestep enemy attacks, which is easier than blocking since you don't have to be pointed in the direction of the attack. Keep in mind this isn't a cheat code, because you'll still need to learn enemy attack patterns so that you can dodge when appropriate while still dealing out tremendous damage. If you are just rolling all the time, you won't be much help to the team. Still, having this capability makes it natural to rush into a group of enemies, slice up a couple of them, and then zip out before they even have a chance to react. You also get a cloak skill that makes it significantly harder for enemies to detect you. Obviously, Thief takes some of what made Strider great in Dragon's Dogma 1, and that was a really fun vocation to play. Wielding dual daggers allows you to attack much faster than most vocations, and this style becomes even more potent if your daggers have an effect that is triggered with every hit. Speaking of which, one of the weapon skills sets your daggers on fire, and again, there are a ton of enemies who are vulnerable to this element. You'll also gain multiple bomb skills that can either target enemies directly or be set on the ground and detonated at a time of your choosing. Thief augments can increase your gold, increase your strength, and decrease the likelihood you are attacked. Nice options to limit heat on squishies or help you gain wealth faster when farming. The next vocation is Archer, and similar to Thief, there's a high focus on mobility, but it's coupled with long-range damage. Archers are incredibly useful for multiple reasons. First, they are one of the best classes for directly damaging an enemy's weak point because you can manually target their bow attacks. Mages and sorcerers target a general area, so it's difficult to hone in on one spot, and obviously melee vocations must be close to deal damage and potentially have to climb enemies to reach their soft spots. Archers can just draw back and let the pain fly. They are also useful because there are a ton of flying enemies, and while melee vocations always have an option to deal with these situations, there is just no substitute for an archer who can snap a bird with ease. Many of these enemies can literally be knocked out of the sky to make them much easier targets for the rest of your team. Archer also has a large focus on making sure you can avoid enemy attacks. It has two core skills which focus on kicking enemies in melee range to either knock them back or launch yourself backwards out of danger. In addition, there's an augment that makes it much easier for you to scale enemies and cliffs so you can reach high points to rain down damage. This mobility is the main advantage archers have over Magick Archers, which definitely has its own perks, but they are sitting ducks compared to this vocation. Other augments will increase your stamina, allow your lanterns to illuminate a wider area, and increase your damage when attacking enemy weak points. There's a lot of builds that will definitely want levels in Archer. Alright, that is the full list of starting vocations, so now let's get into the advanced and hybrid options. Keep in mind that even though these classes come later, they are not considered to be better than your starting four. Instead, they provide unique mechanics that you may or may not find more appealing. For some players, Archer will be significantly better than Magick Archer, and Fighter will work much better than Warrior. It's all about your particular playstyle and what kind of character you want to create. Let's start with the options that only your Arisen can use, and the first one we'll cover is Trickster. This vocation is a support class that is completely unable to attack directly. Instead, Tricksters use a sensor weapon that spreads mist, which creates illusions, impacting enemies and allies in different ways. You can create a copy of yourself that enemies will attack, and that illusion can be teleported to your location, allowing you to move groups of enemies around the battlefield. This is a core skill, so it's always available and essentially means a Trickster can serve as the group's main tank, while also providing some much needed buffs. You can also set up the illusion lure in a harmful area to force enemies into advantageous positions. Tricksters can scout areas by creating an astral projection of itself that will drain stamina for the amount of time that it's used. You can also trick enemies into attacking each other or make your pawns deal significantly more damage. Augments will alert you to the presence of secret tokens or wig stones, increase the gold you obtain, or even increase the amount of products you receive when combining materials. Definitely great options to have when farming and crafting. I was really excited by the Trickster footage when it was first announced, but honestly, after thinking it through a little more, I am not sure how this class is going to stack up. Being wholly dependent upon pawns to deal damage sounds like something that will get old really fast, but I am definitely going to at least try out this playstyle. Next on the list is the Mystic Spearhand, a vocation that combines melee and magic abilities in battle. It must wield a dual spear, so you cannot throw a shield on this class to try and mimic the Mystic Knight from Dragon's Dogma 1. The advantage of Spearhand is that in addition to some really cool melee abilities, you can cast buffs on yourself or use damaging spells against enemies in order to create really cool effects. This includes options like firing a bolt on enemies that freezes them in place and later on in the game allows you to teleport to them. That means the Mystic Spearhand can get to enemies regardless of where they are on the battlefield faster than any other character. You can also levitate objects and hurl them towards enemies, including, in a nice grim touch, the corpses of their dead friends. You can also sap enemies of their vitality and then use it to give yourself more stamina. Augments for this vocation will allow you to gain more gold and hasten movement speed while carrying or lifting objects. This class looks like a ton of fun and is already very popular with the fandom, so while I won't focus on it much, I am looking forward to seeing what crazy builds players are able to come up with. Next up, we have Magick Archer. All of the advantages to having a ranged combatant that I mentioned in the Archer section definitely apply here. While this vocation is much less mobile than Archer, it has a range of flexibility regarding what abilities to deploy that Archer cannot match. Magic Archers can use ice and fire arrows to not only deal damage, but also match the vulnerability of the creature they are facing. They can use restorative arrows to heal allies or bring them back from the dead. They also have a Ricochet Seeker arrow that increases in power the more it ricochets off walls, making it extremely deadly in caves and other enclosed spaces. They also have arrows that can make enemies fall asleep or sap their health and give it to allied pawns. There's just a ton of different options, and it's hard not to really like this class. Magick Archer augments will give you more stamina every time you kill and allow you to augment the physical and magic defense of your pawns. This is the vocation I used during my Dragon's Dogma 1 playthrough, and honestly, I felt like it was the best option in the entire game by a comfortable margin. It will be interesting to see if it still reigns supreme in Dragon's Dogma 2. Coming up next, we have Warfare, a vocation that's perfect for players who love using as many different weapons as possible. Unlike all the other options in this video, Warfare will allow you to take weapons from other classes and use their skills. Your main stat progression will be lower when leveling in this class, but obviously there are some incredible skill combinations you can only do when using Warfare. Unfortunately, beyond that, we don't have any other information about what specific skills it will have access to or what augments you'll be able to use. I know a lot of people are excited about this vocation, but personally, I am not, because I do not think this game is set up for you to take full advantage of the kit. Dragon's Dogma 2 will only allow you to use 4 weapon skills, as opposed to the 6 available in the original game. Sure, combining a bunch of options from 9 different classes sounds great, but if you can only pick 4 weapon skills, it's hard to see how the player can come up with a combination that will feel satisfying. Hopefully, Warfare will provide a way around that limitation. Coming up next, we have Warrior, an option that lets you pick up the biggest and heaviest two-handed weapon you can find to obliterate every enemy you meet. Unlike the Fighter, which is very defense-focused, this class is all about offense and interrupting enemy attacks by knocking them down. The weapons for this vocation have the largest knockdown stats of any available in the game, and obviously enemies who are laying on the ground will be much more vulnerable to attacks from the rest of the team. You can charge forward and knock enemies into walls, doing extra damage, launch enemies into the air, and even swing your weapon around in a whirlwind to destroy everything close by. According to the website, Warrior will also have one of the most damaging abilities in the game when it's fully charged. That was definitely the case in Dragon's Dogma 1, and when timed right, Arc of Deliverance was a real joy to behold. You do have the ability to use this class as more of a tank, and indeed, many players prefer this option over using a fighter. Warrior has a taunt that can be used to draw more enemies in, and it has an augment, which significantly increases your health. Other augments can increase knockdown power and improve your ability to break through an enemy's guard. My pawn, Slandered, will start out as a fighter, but after grabbing augments from a couple of other vocations, I plan to make him a warrior long term. If you end up grabbing my pawn and have any recommendations about what I should do to improve him, feel free to reach out to me on the community Discord. Link to join in the description below. Last but certainly not least, we have the Sorcerer. This vocation is more focused on offensive spellcasting with an arch staff. Unlike mages, sorcerers cannot heal party members and get few support options, but instead they get a core skill that allows them to regain stamina much faster. They also have another core skill which allows them to cast spells faster at the cost of some of their stamina. This class can use elemental magic in a large area of effect to wipe out groups of enemies. It can also inflict debilitating statuses on enemies, such as Frostbite and Knockdown. These spells have long casting times, so similar to other backline vocations, you really need a tank who is absorbing most of the heat. It also means Sorcerer requires the player to be more tactical and patient than some of the other options. Sorcerers cause other Sorcerer or Mage party members to cast their spells faster, so it's very useful to stack them in the same group. Its augments will increase the likelihood of inflicting debilitations with your attacks, reduce the rate at which items deteriorate, augment your knockdown resistance, and increase the damage dealt when exploiting a hostile target's elemental weakness. This is another vocation with augments that even non-magic classes will want to take advantage of. My Arisen, Gandalf, will start as a mage, but will eventually become a master sorcerer. I love being able to blanket an entire battlefield with crazy effects, so even though the slow and patient style isn't usually my thing, I am really curious about running this class. The only concern I have about this is that Sorcerer strikes me as the type of class that's beastly against large groups of mid-tier enemies, but not nearly as useful against one high-level boss. I am also sure it'll be annoying facing enemies like golems who are completely immune to magic. We'll see how things go, but hopefully my character will feel powerful in the end game. That wraps up all the information I have regarding Vocations and Dragon's Dogma 2. I am super excited for this game and would love to hear your thoughts regarding the different mechanics. Which option do you plan to choose for your Arisen and your Pawn? One final reminder, we will be live streaming the game starting Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and join the Discord so you stay up to date on all the content. Feel free to add me on Steam and Slandered, and to use my pawn, which will be named Slandered as well. If any of you are going to be keeping a mage pawn properly leveled, definitely let me know, as I'll be keeping one in my party long term. Hope all of you enjoyed this video. Take care.